Hello, social workers, mental health professionals, and change agents. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Social Work Grants Podcast. We are winding down season 6. Hope everybody's doing well. Thank you for tuning in, tapping in wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast. Saludos a todos. Gracias a todos por su apoyo. Thanks for everybody for your love and support. And keep rocking with the podcast on all streaming platforms, on social media platforms. On Instagram, you can follow the podcast at the Social Work Rants Podcast. That's all one word. On Twitter, don't let Elon scare you and messing Twitter up. Seems like every other day. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Social Work Rants. And on Facebook, aka Meta, type in the Social Work Rants podcast, hit that like button, and get all your podcast info. And of course, hit the red subscribe button on the YouTube. If you follow the YouTube on all audio platforms, hit the follow button, rate the podcast. I appreciate all love it and support again. My guest at this time, if you don't know this gentleman, especially on Twitter, you're doing yourself you might be doing something good. You actually might be doing some self-care, especially on Fridays. Like, make sure those progress notes are in at the end of business day. Mr. Progress Notes bully himself, Michael, is no, seriously, all jokes aside, Michael's good to have you on. We chopped it up, and Michael helped me gain the first ever sponsorship on the podcast earlier this year. So I appreciate Michael.
Yeah, long time fan of the podcast, long time fan of the platform that you've built on social media, and was like grateful for the opportunity to be able to be a sponsor of the podcast at Herd. So, and as someone who is not a mental health professional or a social worker, I'm honored for the opportunity to come on and chat with you.
No, pleasure having you. You really do an amazing job with what you do and giving back to the profession with the marketing tools that you give it and tidbits online with with your posts and stuff like that. And we're definitely going to get into it. So um, let people know who you are and what exactly that you do.
Yeah, so my name is Michael Fulwiler. I'm a marketing professional, and I specialize in the mental health space. I've been working with mental health professionals for over a decade now. I started my career out of the University of Washington, shout out to Seattle, at the Gottman Institute, working for doctors John and Julie Gottman, really helping to build their brand. And then I've spent the last couple of years working as an independent marketing consultant with mental health professionals, therapy practices, as well as with mental health technology companies and mental health tech startups, which is how I got my full-time job now at Herd, which is an accounting software company for mental health professionals.
Yes, and if you have a private practice, Herd is a great platform, especially since we got to do our quarterly taxes, and what better, one of the many platforms, but definitely a platform that you could check out is definitely Herd, especially it's for us in the field who run a private practice. So, and of course, all that marketing, good stuff, and running a business. They don't teach any of that in grad school, unfortunately. So we might as well find a platform that helps social workers. So, no, again, Michael, thank you for coming along. Like, how do you kind of like get started, especially doing what you do and providing like the marketing tools that you provide in the mental health space?
Yeah, I'd say I'd stumbled into this space. I started at the Gottman Institute when I was still in college as an intern, and that was really my first introduction to mental health and therapy. And it's not something that I thought that I wanted to do early in my career when I was in college. Um, I I was interested in marketing, particularly in writing, and I'm a huge sports fan. And so my dream was to work in marketing and in professional sports, particularly in baseball. But once I started working at the Gottman Institute and started to meet therapists, I just fell in love with the impact of the work. As someone who is not a therapist, being able to help therapists make, the impact that they do with their clients and to help them on kind of the business side of their practice. That's something that I've really, become passionate about and have built my career on now for the last 10 years.
Uh, that's awesome. It's funny how we kind of both stumble into social work and thinking about doing completely else. Because I also wanted to get into sports and I wanted to do sports broadcasting. I have a bachelor's in arts and in communications. So stumbled after 9/11, stumbled into social work. So it's and then seeing all these supervisors like being hired and their common denominators, everybody had a MSW. Was like, oh, okay, I guess that's the next step if I'm going to stay in this field. So, and then the rest is history. What are you kind of seeing currently relates to like marketing or lack thereof that social workers can kind of like tap into and kind of help with with their businesses. I know so many with who are either full-time private practice or have a private practice on the side and looking to get into full-time. What can social workers or newbies who just graduated, shout out to the class of 2023 who are either geared by their schools to get into private practice or they actually want to get into private practice, what should they be looking out to kind of help them out to get started?
I'd say that it's easier now than it's ever been to go into private practice as a therapist, social worker, mental health professional. The demand for mental health services is so high just as a result of COVID. Also, because of COVID, therapists and clients are really forced to go online, right, and adopt telehealth and online therapy, which eliminates the need to have an office. And so, in order to see clients, right, like as long as you have your license, there's not actually a lot of expenses to kind of get a practice off the ground. And also, there's opportunities to contract with EAP companies, or there's companies like Alma and Headway out there that are tech companies, but they're helping therapists, especially early career mental health professionals, get paneled and take insurance. And so you're able to, start to see clients on the side that way. I would say too, as a, early career social worker, mental health professional, if you're interested in private practice, it can be very beneficial to work at a group practice and just understand like how the business is run and kind of get that experience before going out on your own, because we work with therapists, mental health professionals at Herd who go out on their own and then they realize like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Do I need a business entity? Do I need a separate bank account?
Mm-hmm.
I have to pay quarterly taxes. How does that work? Who do I pay? Like, how much do I pay? Like
Mm-hmm.
all of these questions, right? Especially on the financial side that, as mental health professionals are just not trained in.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I had a similar experience. I'm not a social worker, but when I started my own business, I was living in Massachusetts. And so I got an LLC and I got the EIN. So I opened my bank account. I got QuickBooks so I could send invoices. And then I remember I sent my first invoice, I got paid, and then I didn't know what to do. I remember it's like, do I have to pay myself a salary? Do I need to run payroll?
Right.
How does that work? So of course I went and I found an accountant and they kind of helped me get set up, but it was expensive. Accountants are like lawyers. And
Mm-hmm.
so at Herd, what we're trying to do is we're trying to simplify all of that financial back office for folks. But I would say, if private practice is something that you're interested in as a mental health professional, as a social worker, there, are resources out there. There are folks like myself. There's companies that, are excited about helping you make that step. And if that's not what you're interested in, that's okay too. I know a lot of great mental health professionals who, work in hospitals or work in schools, and just they're not interested in,
Mhm.
the business side of things, and that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
No, yeah, absolutely. But it's always good to at least you work at these companies or you work, you know, like a hospital setting, or you work at like some like so nonprofit agency, and I'm originally from New York. Like we kind of you see ads like all over the place. No nonprofits, no spending, no ad money, like just for services, or they're out in the community. No, doing some sort of stuff happening. And you kind of see like you still would kind of get that marketing, even though you may not even like think of it as marketing or whatever, but it's like they kind of say, oh, maybe we should be doing this and do a little bit more. I even think about where I work at now is like we could be doing you know work with HIV population. We could be doing our own commercials to like promote like prep medication to prevent HIV or stuff like that, instead of, because I don't really see that promoted too much unless you're like in these community events and stuff like that. So just little tidbits like that you kind of see that kind of still like opens your eyes. And it's I always, for me, I always willing to learn a new skill, because you just never know when you might need it, so, or come in handy or something like that, or uh, so just about my own little tidbit for folks
Yeah,
listening or watching.
definitely. I would say a lot of the therapists that contact me or that I talk to, that I work with, who are struggling with their marketing for their practice, sort of fall into two buckets. One is that they're just getting no leads, no one's calling them, no one's emailing them, they're not getting any interest. And then the other is that they're getting a lot of interest, but it's not from the right type of client, or it's not a good fit. And so they end up having to refer those folks out. And I would say in both cases, what's really important is clarifying who you serve in your practice. Um, I think having a specialization, having a niche, you hear having an ideal client. I'm doing a workshop with our friend Trey in a few weeks, and I think that's foundational, right? Because if you don't have that, it makes marketing very difficult. Like,
Mm,
how do you market to everybody? It's impossible, right? But if you
right.
serve a very specific population, or even multiple populations, you can better kind of understand how to reach that population, how to speak to them, right?
Hmm.
How to go to them where they are, and meet them where they are. So I think that, to me, like, if you take one thing away from this podcast, it's that it's just a clarification of who your audience is that you serve.
Now, now you just mentioned a couple minutes ago about the need is greater for mental health services more than ever, especially COVID exacerbated that. I think that the need was there prior to COVID, but COVID took it to another level. How for those in private practice, or trying to start out and they're not getting leads, what do you think that is? You think it's just because of generalization, or what could that attribute that to?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's where I would start, right? If I was, working with a therapist who wasn't getting any leads, any interest, um, I'd start with, who are they serving? Is that clear? Do they have a website? Like, where are people able to go and find out more information about their practice? Is it easy to, like, sign up, to schedule a call? Like, those really basic things that any service business, right? Um, and then I think the next step that I would take is looking at their referral network. Um, I think especially for folks who've been in private practice for a while, a lot of therapists are full and they have wait lists, and they're
Mhm.
looking for therapists to refer out to. And so, building relationships, building referral network with other therapists, with physicians, with other healthcare professionals, schools, depending on who, your practice serves and who your ideal client is, thinking about where else is that client going
Mm-hmm.
and who may be likely to refer me. And I think like if you can build a strong referral network, and the key to getting referrals is people who are referring you understanding who they should send to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, if you're a generalist, you see everybody, like you don't really have a specialization, you're not going to be top of mind for me. But if someone contacts me, I'm a primary care provider, and they're struggling with their particular issue, and I know that's something that you specialize in, I'm going to send them your way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think having that niche or specialization helps get referrals. And then I think there's other ways that you can market yourself as a therapist and social worker or mental health professional, but I'd say it really depends on who you're trying to reach, right? Because if you work with kids, the way that you market that is going to be very different than if, say, you work with college students or you work with couples, for example.
Right. No, that does make a lot of sense. Now you mentioned a workshop. Let's hear all about it.
Yeah. So our friend Gary Trey Taylor, LCSW, um, go subscribe to his podcast. Find him on
Yes,
social if you're not. I think he's been on the show as well.
yes, he's been on
Um,
a couple times.
yeah.
Shout out to Gary.
So yeah, he reached out to me actually and asked if I wanted to do something, and I've been on his podcast, and so he asked me what I'm seeing, what questions am I getting, and a common theme that continues to come up over time is like identifying who your ideal client is, trying to figure out, who your target audience is, and then how do you actually, with that information, great. So I selected a niche population that I want to work with. Like now, how do I reach them? And so we're doing a workshop together in a couple of weeks. So excited about that.
No, what's the date?
Friday, June 23rd. Maybe
Awesome.
you can put the link in the show notes or
Yeah, absolutely.
put that out on social. But yeah, I would love to, if you're listening to this, we'd love to have you there.
Get where could people go to sign up for that?
So the sign up is through Eventbrite, but if you follow me on social media, I'm just at Michael Fulwiler, mostly on Twitter these days, but also on Instagram and LinkedIn. I do have a newsletter. It's called Therapy Marketer, and I send that every week.
It's an excellent newsletter.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so that goes out on Tuesdays. So definitely get on the mailing list too to stay in touch.
Um, what was like the basics to setting up a newsletter?
So I'd say it starts with, again, who are you trying to reach? And that informs the topic, right? So based on who you're trying to reach, what are you going to talk about? So for me, my audience is mental health professionals and therapists. And what I talk about in my newsletter is marketing. And so I try to share really like practical tools and tips and advice each week that a therapist can read and they can implement it, or it'll get them thinking about maybe their practice in a different way. And there's tools like MailChimp that's free to sign up. And if you have a website, you just drop the sign up form on there and get people on your list. I think if you're active on social media and you're trying to build an audience, I think it's crucial to also have a newsletter, because we've seen on Twitter, right? You mentioned Elon's takeover. I have spent the last couple years building an audience on Twitter, have over 20,000 followers there now, which is pretty amazing. But overnight, like that could change, get taken away, the algorithm could change, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with my newsletter, I have email addresses, contact information for folks. Like, it's not as risky, right? In the marketing world, we call email an owned audience, and social is more of like a borrowed audience, right? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
building on borrowed land, and you're kind of at the mercy of the algorithm. So
Yeah.
I'd say yes, if you're, trying to build a brand, build an audience, build a podcast, anything like that, I would say definitely having an email list is a must have.
Yeah. I'm I'm constantly working on the email, the
It
email
doesn't have to
list.
be, yeah, it doesn't have to be weekly. It can be monthly even. It's just, it's a distribution channel, right? It's another way
Yeah.
to get the word out.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, absolutely. And there's all these tidbits, even just for beginning entrepreneurs or whatever, like just all these things that like they in grad school and teach any of this stuff. And it gets people like more frustrated as like, been already like 13, 14 years out of grad school, and it's like, and then like see everybody kind of like struggle, and like we could be like all like a lot of people, a lot of us are killing it, but like we could have been like really been like super ahead into like their finances and really kind of like bringing in the money once COVID happened, and finally the whole agreement with doing telehealth like first started, and really kind of like, oh, like really seeing like, I want to say like superstar therapists, but like the people like really thriving in their practices, really kind of like getting their name out, and doing the work, because the need is there, it's still constantly there. And I talk about all the time that people are still struggling though post COVID, and it's kind of like we don't even really talk about COVID anymore. And people online is like, is COVID still a thing? Like, yes, COVID. I was
Right.
just I was just in a conference in DC, and somebody caught COVID, and they sent a whole email out like, and I'm like
Yeah.
running home like to go get tested. So it's like it's still a thing. Like there's it's still like monkeypox or mpox is still a thing. So like just people gotta be careful. So it's like, people are working, but people who are really got PTSD and still like grieving and loss and stuff. So it's just gotta be mindful of stuff. So like live your lives, but just be mindful of other people, please.
Yeah.
Um, a- any tidbits that kind of in marketing world, and it could be just basics, so like kind of like stay away from, and
Hmm. Yeah. I
or don't
think,
or don't or don't or try not to do this if you can.
uh, yeah. I think something that I see, um, I've written about this in the newsletter, is that mental health professionals, social workers who are, spending time creating content on social media, and they're trying to build an audience, trying to build a following, and it's not working. They're not getting followers. People aren't engaging on their content. And so, I'll talk to them, and what I'll tell them is, hey, like, the content that you're providing through your channels is really promotional, right? Like, I think it's okay to promote your stuff, but at the same time, you need to be delivering value to people that can help them either solve a problem or entertain them, right? And so when I think about my newsletter, my goal is to deliver value in every email that I send, right? It's helpful for people. I try to do the same thing, on social media. And so I think that it's definitely okay. And I think that people should promote their stuff on social. But I think at the same time, like, if they're leveraging social to only promote their stuff, they're really just advertising their services, right? They're not building a relationship with their community. They're not providing value. And so, um, when I talk to therapists who ask, what should I be posting on social media? Like, like, I want to create content. What should I create content about? It goes back to that, okay, well, who are you creating content for? And then what are the challenges they're having? What questions do they have? but it's also about providing value and not just advertising.
Yeah, that's good tips for anybody that can use it. Sometimes, I still struggle not on the podcast side, but on the business side that I'm going the rebrand, the beginnings of the rebrand happening. So definitely good tidbits regarding that. Um, again, let people know where people could find you. I know you mentioned the Twitter. Give the Twitter handle again.
Yeah, you can follow at your own risk. People people ask me, how did that start? Because I didn't, set out to remind mental health professionals to their progress notes on
Yeah,
Twitter.
how
I
did that
think
come up? That question slipped my mind. So
yeah, I made a meme like a couple years ago, and the meme was of I'll have to share it with you, and you can post it. But I think it all started with, there was a meme of a person standing on the beach, and then they were like looking away from the water, and then there was this huge wave coming, and I think it was like, beginning of 2022, and then the wave was like unfinished progress notes from 2021, just about to like wash them away, and that I got a lot of retweets and shares. It like kind of went viral, and then it just sort of became a thing that therapists would tag me and like let me know when their notes were done, which I would retweet those mentions, and then other people would start doing it, and then it just kind of became a thing that I leaned into. So I just, I have fun with it, and I think
yes, we have
that's
we all have a lot of fun with it.
that's one thing about Twitter that I like, um, that I don't get as much from other platforms, is that it is conversational, right? And there's folks like yourself who never met in person, but we talk on there all the time, and it's fun just to banter and all that. So
Yeah, I I love Twitter. Twitter is definitely my favorite platform. All the stuff Elon's doing, like, doesn't need to not everything he's doing, like fixing the platform, like it was fine the way it is. Just trying to figure out how to get your money back from all the unnecessary amount of money you spent on it. But and he's a for all his stuff, he's a brilliant guy. You just need to do something to get Tesla back so I can invest back in Tesla, because you scared me for so I had to get out of the stock.
yeah.
That's another conversation for another day, which which leads to my own workshop on the 16th, and kind of the rebrand about my financial journey, and how to help fellow social workers with their finances, and not just social workers, that anybody could come on and kind of hear my story in a more personal level, and kind of like what we're going to do with this brand moving forward. So it's on the 16th, 6:30. It'll be in the show notes, so definitely come through and check it out. So about this, I mentioned stock. I'm like, I gotta plug my own workshop too.
I'm glad you're doing that. Something that I've experienced and learned at Herd in the last year is that there's just a lot of shame around finances. People don't talk about it. And just so what we're really committed to is, providing free resources, help people learn about financial literacy, things that, you don't need to be an accountant to know. And it's really stuff people should know. So I'm really glad that you're doing that. And, I'll definitely share that with my audience too.
No, I appreciate that. So now I know the story of the bullying of the progress.
It's
It's
my
hilarious.
villain origin
But
story. Yeah.
no, but no, really, like, going back to Twitter, like, really, like, you could really engage to really with like anybody in the world, and like literally like anybody, or from celebrities to regular. even people you see on a daily basis, or you like interact and then just send a tweet out and you literally have a conversation, have a whole thread back and forth, and just it could go on for days. And like I've met so many people through Twitter, with even those few I never met before, but having like I feel like you know them and kind of use this platform to kind of like you know kick kick the shits and they just talk and BS and have
Mhm.
a genuine conversations, which is what we need to get back to, especially you know this post-pandemic era. That's why I call it. I
Right.
call it the post-pandemic
Yeah.
era because who knows what's happening out after this. So it's kind of good to have these conversations and slowly meeting people in person again that I follow. And it's like, oh snap, kind of like almost like it's like starstruck a little bit. So it's cool. It's cool to see. Um, well, what's up? Uh, I gotta ask, what's up with your Mariners?
Yeah, so last year the Mariners made the playoffs for the first
Yes.
time since 2001. It was the longest streak in major sports. It was like 22 years playoff drought. And then they lost in the first round. And this year they've been slow out of the gate. So we'll see. Think about baseball. It's a long season, right? 162 games. Like we're not even halfway there, and any kind of team can get hot. So we'll see. I am cautiously optimistic is how I describe myself as a as a Mariners fan. So I was 11 years old the last time that they were in the playoffs outside of last year. So it's been a lot of disappointment.
Yeah, I was disappointed at the playoffs too. Like you got them beat. Like come on,
I
it's like,
know.
hopefully maybe the Mariners and my Yankees be fighting for that last wild card spot.
Yeah, I mean, it was supposed to be a big year for the Mariners. The All-Star game is
Yes.
in Seattle. And it just, hasn't lived up to it so far. But like I said, they could win 10 games in a row and it's a totally different conversation. So
Yes. Especially with DeGrom out for the year.
yeah, I just saw that today.
So hopefully Texas, I don't know what's going on with Texas. I think in
I
first place.
know.
Like who do you guys have? You guys are in first place.
Yeah. I saw a tweet that showed it was like a screenshot of the league leaders in runs. And I think it was like the top five. And I think the first three were all in the Rangers. So they're just scoring a ton of runs, I guess. So we'll see though. I mean, DeGrom was a huge offseason signing for them, but he struggled to stay healthy in his career. It's too bad.
Yeah.
He's a New York guy, right? Former
Yeah.
Met.
Yeah, former Met, and that's probably like the highlight of the Met season so far, not re-signing him. And go on record, Seattle needs their basketball team back. They need the Sonics if they're gonna. I saw a tweet about them NBA possibly adding a new team. It's it's Seattle or we riot.
Yeah, please.
we need we need the those that bright green and yellow, those jerseys with, with the Sonics on it.
It's a
Back is
great it's a great sports town. I mean, the Seahawks are known, right, for the 12th man and having
Mhm.
a really loud stadium and loud fan base. You saw the
Man,
Kraken, the second year of the hockey team, made the playoffs and the arena's packed, and the Mariners down the stretch last year were selling out, and so it's a great basketball town. It's too bad that the team left. That's when I was in high school, back
mhm.
in 2000, I think 2007, 2006. But fun growing up. The like Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, Sonics in the 90s.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, ran into the Jordan Bulls team, but yeah, I would love to have basketball NBA back in Seattle.
I mean, if you got a WNBA team, you need an NBA
Yeah, I
team.
mean, the Storm have won like multiple titles, so
Yeah, no, awesome conversation. Great tidbits. No, appreciate you coming on and kick it. We'll talk.
yeah,
We'll talk on Twitter.
yeah. Thanks for having me on. If you're listening, please do reach out. Sign up for the newsletter. It's Therapy Marketer. Just put that into Google. It should come up, and then yeah, find me on Twitter, mostly Michael Fulwiler.
You got 20. You tortured 20,000 followers with progress notes by Friday.
Yeah, come get sign up for your notes reminder. Also, so Friday, and you can confirm this for me. My understanding from therapists that I've talked to is that a lot of therapists try to like save their Fridays for lighter client days so they can catch up on their documentation, their notes.
No,
Maybe they have
that does make
trainings.
sense. Yeah.
Okay, so that's my thinking there. I was like, all right, it's end of the week. We got to wrap these notes up. It's a public service, is how I see it.
A PSA reminder to do progress notes are due by end of business day on Friday.
Yeah, I'm
No
not sponsored
exceptions.
by like therapy notes, but I'm available. So
Cut the check, therapy notes. On that note.
yeah.